The year is 20,753. The Galactic Council, a vast interstellar body that governs the affairs of countless civilizations, gathers in its grand assembly hall. Towering pillars of crystalline metal stretch toward the domed ceiling, reflecting the light of distant stars. Representatives from over 100 species sit in their designated tiers, whispering in hushed, condescending tones. Today, a minor species, one long considered insignificant, has dared to request a seat among them. That species is humanity. The human envoy stands alone at the center of the chamber, facing the assembled delegates. He is unarmed, unarmored, clothed in a simple but dignified uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's United Systems. His face is calm, but his eyes hold an intensity that few notice. He speaks clearly, without hesitation. Humanity petitions for membership within the Galactic Council. We have fulfilled the requirements. We have proven our ability to thrive in the depths of space, to contribute to the greater good, to stand as equals among the stars. For a brief moment, silence fills the chamber. Then, the laughter begins. The representative of the Uldrix Dominion, a reptilian species with scaled ridges lining their elongated heads, leans forward, his lips curling into a smirk. You wish to stand beside the great civilizations? You believe yourselves equals to us? His voice is laced with mockery, his sharp teeth glinting under the chamber's cold lights. A chittering sound ripples through the delegates. Amusement, disdain, outright derision. The ambassador from the Zerth Collective, an insectoid species, with multifaceted eyes, clacks its mandibles. Your worlds are few. Your fleets are pitiful. Your technology is primitive. A fledgling species that has scurried into space. Nothing more. More laughter. The sound grows, filling the chamber, bouncing off the polished walls in cruel echoes. The human envoy does not react. He does not protest. He does not plead. He only nods once, his face impassive, his hands clasped behind his back. I see. That is all he says. Then, without another word, he turns and walks away. The Galactic Council believes the matter is settled. Humanity is no threat. Humanity is weak. Humanity is beneath them. They do not know, cannot begin to imagine. What happens when humanity is challenged? Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Right now, HFY Chronicles-849 is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you enjoy unraveling the mysteries of the universe, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us grow this community together. The council chambers return to their usual affairs: political disputes, economic negotiations, strategic alliances. Humanity becomes a forgotten footnote, a laughable moment in an otherwise routine session. They do not see what is happening beyond their world of bureaucracy and self-importance. Humanity moves in silence. They return to Earth, not in defeat, but in determination. Across the Sol system, the hidden gears of war begin to turn. Research stations, thought to be focused on civilian advancements, unveil their true purpose. Shipyards in the asteroid belt, believed to be mining operations, shift to rapid construction. The industrial mega-complexes on Titan and Europa work tirelessly, their furnaces burning bright. For years, humanity has been underestimated. For years, they have studied the technology of the great empires, learning, adapting, refining. While the Council bickered over trade routes and border disputes, humanity was working, forging weapons, building warships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not for conquest, not for power, but to make a statement. Humanity will not be mocked. And when the time comes, the galaxy will understand why. The stars outside the Sol system remain unaware, indifferent to the storm that brews within humanity's domain. While the Galactic Council dismisses Earth's petition with laughter, humanity does not waste time in mourning their rejection. They do not beg for reconsideration. They do not send envoys to negotiate. They do not issue threats. They prepare. For centuries, humanity has existed on the fringes of galactic politics, dismissed as an anomaly, a species that survived on sheer resilience rather than technological superiority. They had clawed their way into space, building colonies on hostile worlds, adapting to conditions that would annihilate most species. They had fought among themselves for millennia, refining the art of war with every conflict. And now, faced with ridicule and dismissal, they turn their collective will toward a singular goal, proving the galaxy wrong. The shipyards of Mars shift from commercial production to classified military projects. Massive orbital stations, concealed by interference fields, hum with activity as entire fleets are designed, tested, and manufactured in secrecy. Luna Base, long known as a research hub, becomes the nerve center for advanced weapons development. The asteroid belt is repurposed for war, with automated mining rigs converting raw resources into materials for an armada unlike anything the universe has ever seen. In the cold depths of space, humanity creates something new. Something the Galactic Council will never anticipate. While the established empires rely on fleets built for intimidation and slow, methodical warfare, human engineers focus on innovation. They reject the outdated doctrines of the Council's military forces, which rely on size and sheer numbers. Instead, they create weapons of precision. Starships designed not to compete, but to dominate. The Excalibur-class dreadnoughts take form, vessels that bristle with experimental energy weaponry, adaptive shielding, and engines powerful enough to make even the Council's flagship vessels seem sluggish in comparison. The Aegis defense grid is deployed across key sectors, an invisible network of rapid response stations that can intercept and neutralize threats before they ever reach human territory. And then, there is the project so secret that only the highest levels of command even know its true name. A ship, a prototype, a legend in the making. The Nemesis Protocol. A warship unlike anything conceived before, constructed deep within the void of interstellar space. It is neither the largest ship ever built nor the most heavily armed, but it is the deadliest. Cloaked in an advanced stealth system, its hull coated in a material that absorbs and dissipates all forms of detection, the Nemesis is more than a battleship. It is a ghost, an unstoppable force, a blade waiting to be drawn. The Galactic Council's military strategists, had they known, would have dismissed humanity's efforts. What could a single species, a minor power with limited resources, possibly accomplish? They would never believe that within the span of mere decades, humanity had constructed an entire fleet in secret. They would scoff at the idea that a species so primitive had not only matched but surpassed their technological prowess. And so the galaxy remains blissfully unaware. But the clock is ticking. Humanity does not seek war. But they have been humiliated, ridiculed, insulted in a way that no species before them has ever endured. They had come in peace, seeking recognition, only to be mocked. That was a mistake. Because humanity has always been at its strongest, when it has something to prove. In the darkness of space, amidst the glow of dying stars, a fleet begins to gather. Their engines burn cold, their weapons lie dormant. But the moment is coming. A reckoning is near. And when the time comes, the galaxy will finally understand what it means to mock humanity. The universe remains quiet. Stars burn and fade. Civilizations rise and fall, and the Galactic Council, bloated by its own arrogance, continues its rule unchallenged. To them, humanity is nothing more than a footnote in history, a minor species, barely worth consideration. They do not realize that in the void, just beyond the edges of their perception, something is coming. Humanity has never been patient by nature, but in this moment, they embrace silence like an old friend. They move in shadows, perfecting their fleet, testing their technology, waiting for the exact moment to strike. Earth itself has changed. What was once a planet of open discussions and political division has unified under a singular purpose. The Terran Defense Initiative, a coalition of human military forces and scientific minds, now operates without obstruction. Every industry, every technological breakthrough, every ounce of effort is dedicated to one mission, the proving. Because that's what this is. Not a war. Not yet. This is a statement, a declaration to the stars. And so, as the final warships leave their hidden shipyards, humanity selects the site of their first move. The Galactic Council had made a critical mistake in their mockery. Their laughter had not been contained to closed chambers. Their scorn had been public, a grand spectacle broadcast across the galactic networks for entertainment. And because of this, other species, those who had also been dismissed, belittled, or ignored, had been watching. Some in pity, others in amusement, but a few had watched with quiet, desperate hope. The Zelvec Dominion was one such civilization. They had once been proud, a sovereign race with a thriving economy and a military capable of holding its own. But the Council had deemed them unworthy. Their fleets had been systematically dismantled, their sovereignty revoked under the guise of galactic stability. The Dominion had become a puppet state, forced to pay tributes they could not afford, their people reduced to second-class citizens. And so, when the Dominion's distress, call is sent into the void, pleading for help against yet another unjust demand from the Council. No one expects an answer. The Council certainly does not. To them, it is routine. Another species forced to kneel. Another civilization reminded of its place. But the signal does not disappear into silence. It reaches a listening post, one of hundreds, scattered in the dark, waiting for this moment. It reaches Earth. It reaches Nemesis, a single ship, resting in the void, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. A simple response is sent back. Hold the line. And then, the void trembles. They come without warning. Fleet emerges from the darkness, silent, lethal, predatory. The Council's forces, stationed in orbit around the Dominion's homeworld, barely have time to register their approach before the first shots are fired. But these are not the slow, cumbersome energy weapons of the Galactic Council. These are something new. The Excalibur-class dreadnoughts unleash their wrath, their particle lances cutting through Council ships like blades through flesh. The Aegis defense grid, once thought to be nothing more than a theory, activates in real time, intercepting enemy fire with an efficiency so absolute that it defies comprehension. And then, from the depths of space, Nemesis arrives. There are no words to describe the fear that follows. One moment, the Council's flagship remains untouched, its shields at full capacity, its weapon systems locked onto the human fleet. The next, it ceases to exist. No explosion. No warning. One moment, it is there. The next, it is dust. The Council forces, unaccustomed to an enemy that does not fight by their outdated rules, descend into chaos. Their formations collapse, their officers shout conflicting orders. Their admirals, who have never seen true war, realize too late that they are not prepared. And then, humanity speaks. A single transmission, broadcast across all frequencies, reaching every ship, every station, every being watching from afar. We asked for recognition. You mocked us. We asked for peace. You dismissed us. We asked to stand beside you. You laughed in our faces. A pause. Silence. You wanted to see what we were capable of? Now you will. The battle is not long. It is not drawn out. It is an execution. And when the dust settles, when the last of the Council's forces are reduced to debris floating in, the void, when the Zelvec Dominion looks to the sky and realizes they are free once more, humanity does not linger. They do not demand thanks. They do not occupy the planet. They simply leave, disappearing back into the void, leaving behind only a single message: you are not alone. And across the galaxy, those who have suffered under the Council's rule begin to wonder. Who else is watching? Who else is waiting? Who else will rise? Because humanity has made its first move, and the game has just begun. For a brief moment, the galaxy is silent. The aftermath of the Dominion battle spreads like wildfire, carried on the tongues of smugglers, traitors, and frightened Council officers who barely escaped with their lives. The Galactic Council had been humiliated, not by an armada of overwhelming size, not by a coalition of countless species, but by a single fleet, a fleet they had ridiculed, ignored, and dismissed. And yet, this was not the true battle. This was merely the first ripple in a storm that would shake the very fabric of the cosmos. The Council convenes in emergency session, their opulent chambers filled with the nervous murmurs of species that had never before feared an external force. They have always been the supreme power, the undisputed rulers of civilization. Their fleets patrol the trade lanes. Their laws dictate the fates of entire worlds. And now, they face a crisis unlike any before. Not because of the battle itself, because of what it represents. The Council's strength does not lie in their warships or technology. It lies in the perception that they are untouchable, that their word is law, that resistance is futile. But now, across 1,000 worlds, in the farthest reaches of the known universe, the unthinkable is happening. Hope is returning. Oppressed civilizations, subjugated species, and beaten-down worlds watch the footage of humanity's strike and begin to ask the question the Council fears most. If the humans can stand against them, why can't we? But as the Council spirals into panic, humanity does not stop. This was never about a single battle. This is a campaign. A war waged in the shadows and fought not with brute force alone, but with strategy, precision, and a level of psychological warfare the Council is wholly unprepared for. Humanity does not seek to destroy the Council. Not yet. Instead, they seek to dismantle it piece by piece, pulling at the strings that hold its fragile empire together. And so, the next move begins. The Terran Defense Initiative has learned everything it can about the Council, not just their fleets and weapons, but their culture, their bureaucracy, their weaknesses. And one truth stands above all others. The Council is bloated, corrupt, filled with politicians and bureaucrats more concerned with their personal wealth than the stability of their own rule, and that can be exploited. Phase 1. The Economic War. The Galactic Council thrives on control of trade routes, of industry, of resource distribution. They impose tariffs and sanctions on any civilization they deem unworthy, ensuring that true power remains in the hands of a select few. But, while the Council governs, humanity has been building. The moment Earth's forces revealed themselves at the Dominion, 100 hidden human-aligned merchant fleets moved into position. With precision and calculation, humanity does something far more devastating than an open war. They shatter the Council's economy. Terran trade ships, faster and more efficient than anything the Council has ever encountered, begin running shadow supply lines, offering technology, weapons, and resources to civilizations who had been deliberately kept in poverty. Suddenly, planets that relied on Council-supplied fuel sources no longer need them. Agricultural worlds, once taxed into famine, find new markets with better prices. Independent shipyards, long forced to obey the Council's draconian regulations, now have access to cutting-edge materials at a fraction of the cost, and it all happens so fast, the Council can't stop it. One by one, planets quietly pull away from the Council's grasp. Not through rebellion, not through war, through economics. Trade alliances shift. Resources become unreliable. The once unshakable grip of the Council on galactic commerce begins to slip. And then, humanity makes its second move. Phase 2. The Psychological War. The Council has always ruled through fear. Their enemies do not resist because the consequences are always absolute. A species that defies them is erased from history. Its people enslaved, its culture destroyed, its name never spoken again. But now, something is changing. Rumors spread like wildfire, stories of Council warships vanishing without a trace. Governors waking up to find their security codes no longer functional, their planets under new leadership. Entire outposts turning against the Council seemingly overnight, their communications mysteriously jammed. Ghost fleets. That's what the Whispers call them. Ships that appear from nowhere, strike with pinpoint precision, and disappear before retaliation can even be considered. Tales of Nemesis, the flagship of humanity's campaign, grow with each passing day. It is described as a ship unlike any other, able to phase in and out of existence, its weapons capable of breaking even the strongest defenses in a single shot. Some say it is not a ship at all, but an avenging god, striking down the corrupt and the unworthy. But the truth is far more terrifying. Nemesis is not alone. For every battle where Nemesis is seen, 3 others take place in complete silence. Council stations simply go dark. Their defenses deactivate. Their leaders are found dead in their chambers, their encrypted files stolen, Their war plans leak to the public, and with every shadow war strike, the Council's fear grows, because they do not know where humanity is hiding. They do not know how these attacks are happening. They do not know who they can trust. Their fleets, once symbols of order and dominance, begin turning against each other. Commanders accuse one another of treason. Paranoia spreads through their ranks. And then, humanity delivers its final blow of this phase. A message. Broadcast on every frequency. Sent to every species. Spoken in every language. We are humanity. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek empire. But we will no longer be mocked. No longer be ignored. No longer be cast aside as lesser. We do not wish for war. But if war comes, know this. A pause. Silence. And then, the words that send a chill through every leader in the galaxy. We will not fight like you. We will not fight by your rules. We will not meet you on a battlefield of your choosing. You will never see us coming. You will never know when we are among you. You will never know how many we are. You will never know how long we have prepared. You have mocked us for the last time. And in the heart of the Galactic Council, in their grandest chamber, the most powerful rulers of the known universe, who have never before known fear, realize something. They are no longer in control. The galaxy was unraveling. The Council's once unbreakable dominion now fractured in ways no one had thought possible. It wasn't just the loss of a battle. It wasn't even the economic turmoil. It was something deeper, more insidious. For the first time in millennia, the Council did not feel like the supreme rulers of the stars. They felt hunted. The whispers of humanity's ghost fleet had become more than just rumors. They had become a nightmare. Entire Council outposts continued to go dark, their high-ranking officials vanishing without a trace. Warships designed to bring terror to rebellious species suddenly found themselves helpless. Deactivated mid-flight, weapons locked out, engines shut down as they drifted aimlessly through the void. No distress call, no attack, just silence. And then, the ships were found. The most terrifying part? The crews were still alive. They were uninjured, untouched, but broken. Those who were recovered babbled about shadows moving inside their ships, about hearing voices in their own minds, about systems that refused to obey them. They spoke of a presence, something unseen, something that let them live, only to send a message. Your time is over. Paranoia spread like wildfire. Entire fleets refused to leave port, terrified that they would be next. Governors locked themselves away in fortresses, unwilling to communicate through unsecured channels. The power of the Council had always rested upon its illusion of invincibility. But now, that illusion was shattered, and humanity knew it. Phase 3. The Subversion War. Humanity had never intended to fight the Council in a war of attrition. That was a battle the Terran Defense Initiative could not win. Not through brute force alone. The Council's fleets still outnumbered Earth's 1,000 to 1. Their resources were vast. Their technology, in some areas, was superior. But that didn't matter, because this was never about fighting the Council's fleets. This was about turning their empire against itself. And so, humanity struck at the rotting core of the Galactic Council, its corruption. Across 1,000 worlds, messages were leaked. Confidential Council documents, revealing secret alliances, hidden betrayals, and the depths of their deception. The Council had always kept control by manipulating its own people. But now, those people knew the truth. Entire species learned they had been played against one another. Empires that believed themselves favored discovered they were nothing more than tools. Wealthy dynasties that had grown fat under Council rule now saw the very contracts that doomed them to servitude. And then, in a final act of controlled chaos, humanity did something unthinkable. They exposed the Council's hidden military projects. For centuries, the Council had operated in secrecy, developing superweapons beyond the knowledge of even its own member states. World-killer missiles, planetary sterilization fleets, bioweapons that could wipe out entire species. These projects had been meant as contingency plans. Now, they became proof of betrayal. The moment these secrets were made public, the Galactic Council ceased to be a unified government. Entire factions turned on each other overnight. Civilizations that had once been allies now faced civil war. The Council's military, once an iron fist of control, found itself divided. Officers refused orders, planetary governors declared independence, and ambitious warlords rose to claim power in the chaos. And as the Council burned from within, humanity watched. Not with malice, not with cruelty, but with the cold, precise understanding of a species that had fought its own wars, a species that had learned from history. They had not needed to fire a single shot. They had not needed to engage in mass slaughter. They had simply given the galaxy the truth, and the truth had been enough. But even as the Council fell to pieces, the war was not over, because not everyone would accept defeat. At the center of the galactic turmoil, a single Council faction refused to fall. They were the purists, the hardliners of the old empire. Those who still believed in the Council's divine right to rule. Those who saw humanity not as an adversary, but as an infestation. And in their desperation, they did something that had never been done before. They called upon the Forgotten Legion. For centuries, the Forgotten Legion had been nothing more than a myth, a secretive, ancient order of warriors hidden within the depths of the Council's darkest military projects. Unlike the traditional Council forces, these warriors did not serve for wealth, status, or political power. They served for one purpose alone: to erase threats to the Council's dominion. They were the ones called upon when entire planets needed to vanish. They were the ones who had wiped civilizations from history, reducing once great empires to mere footnotes in time. And now they were coming for Earth. A fleet was assembled, larger than any the Council had ever sent before. Not a fleet of occupation, not a fleet of diplomacy, a fleet of eradication. Their orders were simple. Humanity is a disease, and diseases must be purged. As the stars burned with the fires of civil war, a new armada emerged from the void, silent, relentless, more advanced than anything humanity had encountered before. And in the heart of the Terran Defense Initiative, as alarms blared and warnings filled the command centers, one truth became clear. The final battle had begun. The universe held its breath. For all the chaos, for all the destruction, one undeniable truth remained. This was it. The Council, in its desperation, had played its final card. The Forgotten Legion had been unleashed, and there was no turning back. Unlike the standard Council fleets, unlike the fractured warlords scrambling for power, the Legion was something ancient, terrifying, and precise. They did not fight for politics. They did not fight for glory. They fought to erase threats, and humanity had been declared the greatest threat in the history of the Council. This was no longer a war of survival. This was a war of annihilation. The march of the Forgotten Legion. Deep in the void between stars, a fleet unlike any the galaxy had seen in millennia moved without sound. The warships of the Legion were unmarked, with no insignias, no identifying signals. They were ghosts in the dark, sleek and black, their hulls absorbing even the faintest light. Unlike the brutish, angular dreadnoughts of the Council's standard armada, these ships were predatory, elegant in their lethality, moving with terrifying efficiency. They did not communicate. They did not announce their presence, and when they struck, it was instantaneous and absolute. The first human colony to fall never saw them coming. One moment, life carried on as usual, families walking beneath the glow of their planet's twin moons, security patrols running standard checks, orbital defenses standing watch, then silence. Every system shut down simultaneously. Orbital stations flickered and died. Entire fleets went blind. And then the killing began. No energy signatures, no incoming missiles. Just the brutal reality of physics. Kinetic rods, fired from thousands of kilometers away, tore through the colony's infrastructure like the wrath of a god. Buildings vaporized on impact. Entire districts reduced to craters of glass and fire. Defense platforms, designed for conventional engagements, were annihilated before they could react. In the span of minutes, the colony was gone. And the worst part? There was no distress call. Humanity's response. For the first time since the war began, humanity hesitated. Not out of fear, not out of weakness, but out of uncertainty. The Terran Defense Initiative had been built to counter the known threats of the galaxy. They had prepared for grand fleet battles, planetary sieges, and economic warfare. But this was an entirely different beast. The Forgotten Legion did not engage in diplomacy. They did not broadcast their movements. They did not even take prisoners. They struck, they destroyed, and they vanished. And so, the question arose: how do you fight an enemy that refuses to be found? General Elias Carter, Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Initiative, stood before his war council in silence. His officers spoke in frantic bursts. "The fleet is too spread out. We can't predict their next target. They're hitting us without warning. We need more intel." Carter raised a hand and the room fell silent. Then we changed the game. And just like that, humanity's strategy shifted. For too long, they had played by the rules of the galaxy. That ended now. If the Forgotten Legion fought like ghosts, then humanity would become monsters. The first order went out. Project Aegis. Every remaining human colony was placed under a system-wide blackout. No signals in or out. No open transmissions. Entire planets became silent tombs in the dark. From the outside, it would look as though humanity had retreated, abandoning their worlds to the shadows. But beneath that silence, beneath that seeming surrender, something far more terrifying was happening. The trap was being set. The trap is sprung. The Forgotten Legion approached the next target, an Earth-like colony called New Eden. From orbit, it was perfect. No activity, no power, no sign of resistance. A world abandoned to the inevitability of defeat. The Legion moved in, and that was when everything changed. In the span of a heartbeat, the sky erupted with fire. From deep beneath the planet's surface, hidden artillery batteries launched salvos of hypervelocity slugs. Massive tungsten rods, moving at relativistic speeds, tore through the Legion's fleet before they could react. Ships that had stood for thousands of years, crewed by warriors of legend, were ripped apart in an instant. Then, Phase 2. The moment the first wave of Legion ships fell, the true horror emerged: human warships. But these were not the sleek, pristine vessels that had once represented the Terran fleet. These ships were warborn, covered in jagged armor, adorned with the scars of battle. Humanity's warships had been remade for one singular purpose: to hunt the hunters, and they did. Like wolves descending upon prey, human vessels tore through the surviving Legion fleet. Boarding parties flooded the halls of their enemies, moving with a brutality that sent shockwaves through the council. The Forgotten Legion had never known fear, until now. The battle for New Eden lasted less than an hour, and when it was over, the last of the Legion ships burned in orbit, their crews left to drift into the cold void. But humanity didn't stop there. Because now they had prisoners. And with prisoners came answers. The truth revealed. For decades, the Forgotten Legion had been a myth, a secret whispered in the dark corners of the Council. But now they were real, and more importantly, they had weaknesses. The War Council dissected the data. Every captured ship, every fallen warrior, they studied everything, and that was when they learned the terrible truth. The Forgotten Legion had a secret. They were not just warriors. They were conditioned, genetically modified, enhanced beyond normal biology, but at a cost. They relied on a singular unified command structure. Unlike standard fleets, they were not independent thinkers. They were tools, pawns of something larger. And that meant one simple fact: if humanity could decapitate the Legion, take out the ones giving the orders, the war would be over. But the true enemy was not in the fleet. The true enemy was somewhere deeper. Somewhere, hidden. And so, with the Battle of New Eden won, General Carter gave the final order. Find the masters of the Forgotten Legion. Find them, and end this war. And in the darkness, across the silent expanse of space, humanity's hunters prepared for their final mission. Because the war was no longer about defense. Now, it was about revenge. The war had reached its breaking point. The Forgotten Legion, once thought to be an unstoppable force, The Council's final answer to humanity's defiance had suffered its first true defeat. New Eden had been the turning point. Not just a battle, not just another skirmish in the blood-soaked history of the war. It had been a statement. Humanity had proven something the galaxy had refused to believe. The hunters could be hunted. But this was not the end. Because the Forgotten Legion had not acted alone. They were puppets, and somewhere in the dark, their masters still pulled the strings. Humanity's war was no longer about survival. It was about ending the threat once and for all. Hunting the masters. Every captured Legion soldier had been studied, dissected, both physically and psychologically. The War Council had torn through their databases, decrypted their battle logs, and analyzed the very structure of their minds. The answer was clear. The Forgotten Legion did not think for themselves. They were conditioned from birth, shaped, molded, and controlled by an unseen force. Their neural architecture had been altered, locking them into absolute obedience. They followed only one voice, a voice that did not belong to the Council, a voice that was far older. The Forgotten Legion was not just the Council's secret weapon. It was an inheritance, a remnant of something ancient, something that had once ruled the stars before the Council even existed, and it was still out there, waiting, watching, controlling. The intelligence reports all pointed to a single, uncharted sector of space, a void on every galactic map, a region that no species dared approach. It had no name, no recorded history, just a silence that stretched for thousands of years. And yet, hidden within that silence, the truth awaited. If humanity wanted to end the war, if they wanted to tear out this disease by the roots, they would have to go there. Straight into the heart of the abyss. And so, the fleet was assembled. Not for battle, not for defense, for extermination. The expedition fleet, codenamed Judgment, was unlike anything humanity had ever sent into the void. These were not warships designed for open battle. They were executioners. Stripped down, hyper-advanced vessels built for one purpose: to get in, strike fast, and erase the enemy from existence. Leading the charge was the UNS Vindication, a ship that had survived the worst battles of the war, reforged in the fires of New Eden, its crew hardened by the knowledge that they were no longer fighting for peace. They were fighting to ensure that no one would ever threaten humanity again. They left no transmissions, no signals, no warnings. They vanished into the void. The last enemy at the heart of the uncharted sector. They found it, a world that should not have existed. It was massive, too large for a natural planet, too structured for a moon. A construct of unknown origin, hanging in the void like a tombstone marking the grave of an empire long forgotten, and it was not dead. The moment the fleet approached, it awoke. Energy surged through impossible machinery. Something ancient turned its gaze toward the intruders. And then it spoke. Not in words, not in sound, but in pure thought. A presence that had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations. A presence that had commanded the Forgotten Legion. For millennia, it had no name. It did not need one. It had always been here. The architects, the true rulers of the Forgotten Legion. The unseen hand that had guided the Council from the shadows. A species so old they had long abandoned physical form, existing now only as raw, unfiltered intelligence. For thousands of years, they had shaped the galaxy. Erased threats before they could rise. Controlled the Council without ever needing to appear. And now they had made a mistake. They had underestimated humanity. The final judgment. The architects tried to speak, tried to warn, tried to bargain. But humanity did not listen. Because there was nothing left to say. In the end, all that remained was fire. The fleet opened fire in unison, their weapons striking with pinpoint precision. The architects fought back. Not with ships, not with armies, but with the very fabric of reality itself. Gravity twisted. Time bent. The laws of physics began to unravel. But it didn't matter. Humanity had come prepared. The Vindication's command crew stood unflinching, even as the universe itself seemed to scream. They had one order, one mission, and they would see it done. The final payload was delivered. A weapon designed in the blackest depths of human research. A creation so absolute in its destruction that it had only one name: Oblivion. The construct collapsed in on itself. The intelligence that had shaped the galaxy for thousands of years screamed in rage, in fear, then fell silent. And just like that, it was over. The Forgotten Legion, leaderless, shattered within days. The Council, now exposed for their corruption, collapsed under its own weight. And humanity? They did not celebrate. There was no victory parade, no grand speeches, just the cold understanding that they had done what needed to be done. The galaxy had tried to break them, but in the end, humanity had been the ones to break the galaxy. And as the fleet returned home, leaving behind only ruins and echoes, one message was sent across every surviving world, every remaining faction. A simple warning, a reminder of what had happened. We did not seek this war, but we ended it. If you challenge us again, we will not be merciful. And, across the stars and the silence left behind, no one dared to answer.